Welcome everyone. So we are very pleased that you can join us for this panel discussion on challenging new customer experience in retail and financial services at the age of COVID-19. So the Fintech and Retail Tech 2 is a 3-day digital event organized by Business France in the UK and in Ireland to connect French tech companies providing innovative solutions to retailers and financial services companies. The objective is for the French delegation to meet with decision makers and get insights from local experts on several topics. And today, more specifically, on the evolution of the customer experience in the current context. So feel free to use the chat to ask your questions and we'll relay them to the panelists. And there will be time at the end of the session for Q&A. You'll also have the opportunity to meet with the French delegation on the Swapcard platform at the end of the conference. So now I'll hand it over to Colin Payne from Capgemini to introduce today's panel discussion.
Thank you, Pauline. Good to see everyone in the room today. And I'm very, very pleased to be here chairing and looking after this great panel of experts. And my name is Colin Payne. I am the Vice President and lead of Next Generation Financial Services for Capgemini Invent. And I want to just introduce my panel members. Perhaps if we can start with Alexandre, he's first in my view, and from then on we can go around the table and introduce yourselves, please, guys.
Hi everyone, I'm very pleased to be invited in this panel. So I'm the Chief Digital Officer of a French retailer called Franprix. Chain banner of convenience stores that exist over 60 years now.
Thank you. Perhaps Martin, if you're next. You might need to go off mute, Martin.
Mute is off, apologies. So good afternoon, everyone. Martin Harrison, responsible for Chameleon's operations in Northern Europe. I'd like to think of myself as a digital native after something around sort of 10 plus years working in transactional. And today I also have to apologise that we had Abby Senior from Manchester United that was due to attend, but she got dragged into internal meetings, has sent her apologies. So some of the areas we'll discuss, I've got a deep knowledge of football clubs generally. I'll be talking around how Abby, who's responsible for customer experience and analytics, is responding to COVID and how Manchester United are engaging with their fans.
Thank you, Martin. Maybe Blondie?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Blondie Miltree. I'm the Managing Director of Relevancy, and Relevancy is a tech startup that is developing marketing solutions for retailers that are based on AI and tech.
And last but not least, Niall.
Hi everybody, it's Niall Kenny here. I work in PayPal and I manage the customer services, strategy and delivery and operations for PayPal in France, among other countries across Europe. So delighted to give our view on how we're dealing with the growth in the digital revolution.
Thank you guys, great introductions. As you can tell, great expertise across the board. And we're going to kick off with just a warm-up sort of question for all of you, really. From my perspective, we've been looking at customer experience for quite a few years now. Certainly the pure digital players who've come in have been focused on that. They've had a major impact on all of our lives, both as consumers and as practitioners. So for all of you, really, just a simple question. What customer experience trends are you seeing at the moment? Not necessarily just because of COVID, but just generally speaking this year, what's been the big ticket items that you've focused on? You know, I've got to say that in this format, I would normally be with you in person, but I'm going to leave it open for you just to jump in and compete with each other for your answers. So go ahead.
Everyone's nervous. I'll go first. So as Chameleon, I think we've commissioned a report, and really what I think the big issue, and we've been seeing this for a while, is you cannot assume that yesterday's behaviour with customer experiences will be tomorrow's success. And I think just in terms of what we've been seeing is a greater emphasis on experimentation and the world of digital really being seen as new and evolving, and just keeping that mind's eye on the evolution as it occurs in real time, which we can pick up later.
I would say on my side, for retail, we had big changes with Amazon, of course, and mainly as I deal with grocery stores, the impact of Amazon Prime Now arrival on the French market was quite important. It occurred in 2016. So 4 years ago, and it had big impact on our strategy and our adaptation to this context, and the digital transformation that was led just after. And so the impact of the customer experience was quite different in terms of payments, contactless payments, contactless delivery today with the COVID context. So there are quite different things that change in the various steps of the customer experience that can be in store or online as well.
And maybe to complete Alexandre's point, what we've seen in retail also is the need for personalization. Consumers are really asking to have like a personalized experience, being like in the way we communicate to them, being like in the product, in the promotion. And really what's very important is to leverage the data to be able to do and to deliver this personalization.
Yeah, I think in PayPal, what we've seen is that obviously we're already growing quite quickly with digital payments, but over the last 9 months, as new merchants came on and consumers started, more consumers started using our platform, was how do you just deal with customer service? So it really accelerated our plans around self-service, around using AI bots to do a lot of the front end navigation for customers to either help them to self-service or to get to the correct agent faster with as much information as possible. So I think, you know, customers are sitting at home. It's now 24/7. They want answers. Before, you might have been at work and just log on. I have an issue, but now it's I want an answer now, this minute. And obviously, how do you staff to this minute 24/7? So messaging is a big thing, rather than phones, self-service, and AI, and using technology to help customer self-service and get service quicker.
And if I was going to give you a quick Manchester United answer, I think from Abby's perspective, you can't get away from what COVID has done. The results for Manchester United were announced yesterday. You can go and find them online, but I've got access to some information that basically says if you look at the multiple millions that every game day is now being lost, then the whole focus is money and fan engagement. And so what Manchester United were really focused on, and the trend they'd seen, gamification is seen as one of these areas where you've got constant engagement with your community of fans and giving them mechanisms to keep them engaged on the mobile app. And that's really been the biggest investment with a new website at Manchester United, so that they're able to look at that fan engagement, and from that, where appropriate, look at what new revenue stream they can get, because the game day revenue and the fan experience in the stadium is gone.
I think that's a really, really important point, and it speaks to me about channel. And I suppose from my perspective, I've been using, like you, Martin, digital for over a decade, and so I'm almost tired of digital, because to me it's a natural thing. But with the lack of channel now in those kind of game scenarios, those event scenarios, I look at it from the banking point of view, the lack of channel in physical branch. Not only because of COVID, but also the cost of running these things. And it's interesting that channels themselves are now shifting. And I wonder, from Niall's point of view, on channel shift, because of course that plays to PayPal's strengths. I noticed and picked up last week, Niall, that PayPal are now offering a new retail lending service to those in the UK who need to spread the cost of purchases. And I'm guessing, Alexandre, something from your perspective as well on the grocery side, and the ability to transact easily. Is there something you're seeing in terms of physical channels, Niall, first, and maybe followed by Alexandra and Blondine? Anything you've picked up?
Yeah, what we would have seen, obviously, you know, for PayPal, a very heavy dependency on travel and leisure for online payments and you know, buyer-seller protection. What we've seen is a huge rush from fashion, electronics, DIY, and home to merchants coming online to be able to sell their products. So that's the first thing. So we've got a lot of new customers coming on, and obviously by merchants setting up, then they attract the consumers. So I think that's the first thing we're seeing. So the net new actives, we call them, has exploded. So you want them to, obviously, then they're online. How do you help them develop their business and grow their business? And in France, we launched a product, Go Pay Later, where you can pay in installments. So again, we see this as that I want to buy maybe a new TV for 500 euros. You know, I want to pay it over 3 or 4 months. So we think this is a win-win for the consumer. They can get the product now, and then for the merchant, it helps them, you know, get big ticket items across the line quicker, and it helps close them. So this is, I suppose, an opportunity for retailers to actually, you know, where they've lost business on the physical side, to actually hopefully accelerate their business on the online side.
Alexandra, what do you think from a perspective of a very major you know, retail operation through COVID, which is essential to everybody? How do you feel those channel shifts are affecting you?
I would stay on the payment side, just to mention a few things. I said contactless payment, just to figure it out. You have in Franprix 80% of transactions that are in a credit card or payment, seamless payments. So it's very important. I recall we are convenience stores, so small transactions, small baskets, around 12 euros. So people use a lot this type of new payments. And with the context of COVID, we have fostered new payment methods quite quickly, because there was, of course, a strong demand on that. If I talk about e-commerce, because we work on e-commerce as well, and then I will talk maybe about loyalty programs. We have launched a service which aims to deliver in 40 minutes from every store Franprix. So this is a point also on the instantaneous experiences that we are all expecting with digital. Useless to say that we have many stores in Paris. We are number one in terms of number of stores in Paris. There is a demand as well for e-commerce, and of course these customers are the same one that go to the stores, so they have multi-channel or omni-channel experiences. And we can see it as well in the loyalty program, where they expect to have, of course, the same advantages in store or online. And that's why we work with Relevancy on personalized promotions that can be dynamic, real-time, and available in store or online.
What I'd like to do is just pick up on that loyalty issue, because it's one of the big questions I have at the moment, is how do you retain those customers? How do you build that advocacy? And loyalty has always been an interesting discussion point. From a personal perspective, the point systems, the coupon systems, for me, I have to ask the question, I guess maybe to Blondine, have those kind of old systems of loyalty had their day? Is it now a question of looking to data and to personalization, which you mentioned earlier, as really the mechanics of new loyalty?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Colin. What we've seen is this decrease in loyalty, and initially the reaction of the retailers were really to increase the promotions to attract people, and not taking into consideration like that the clients are like different and have different like choices and tastes. So the number of products on promotion increased drastically. I think in the UK there's like up to 50% of the product that are on promotion. So it really creates like a huge number of products that are on promotions. but the clients don't necessarily know when there are so many promotions. I mean, which products are on promotions, and we really believe that we've reached this end of kind of like mass promotion model, and that the retailers really need to shift towards really more personalization and personalize the promotions to each client. And that's what we do at Relevancy through like algorithm, making sure that the offers are like matching the client's purchase trends. We cannot hear you, Colin.
Sorry, I'm muted. Not muted myself again. Sorry. The big question from that for me is what is encouraging is a use of data, which is brilliant, and the analytics that go behind that. But how on earth can brands manage what seems to me to be an ever extending and expanding sea or ocean of data? Is it actually possible to hyper personalize? And I think I'd be very interested in your response, Blondine, and maybe also from Martin's response. Is it needed, a personal response? Because I think of something like a Manchester United, and actually, what's the personalization behind a fan at that point? So it's two questions, one for Blondine, and then maybe followed for Martin.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like we've really entered the area of big data. You know, when you have like millions of like loyal consumers, and then you receive their transaction like every day, and then you have like thousands of offers, you're really entering like the realm of big data, and you need to have special technology to deal with it. And the good thing is with the cloud and the different like clouds and the different technologies that have been developed, then we're able to do calculation like very quickly. And things we couldn't have done like 1 year ago, now we're able to do it in like minutes. So there's been like huge shifts and huge progress in the technology that we can use in the clouds that makes this like hyper personalization efficient. But I think you're right that it's always like we need to take into consideration what's the cost of personalization versus like what you're losing, you know, and the benefit you're gaining. For example, what we see in digital channels, sometimes like the cost of like hyper targeting through like digital campaigns can be more costly than like the benefit you're gaining. So I think that's like really a balance to assess.
So I'll try and give you a couple of thoughts around this, Colin. And Blondine, great points. And I think what you're highlighting for me is personalization is expensive, and it's very easy to look at technology, but it's far broader than that. What this is about is all the actors. And, you know, if you start looking at implementing personalization effectively in a business, it's a board level down team that's required. And, you know, I've walked into businesses that just aren't ready, and I've seen others that just want to make it happen, and they will do, as long as it's coming from the exec. So I think for me, and where we are with Chameleon is we don't really see much personalization really being heavily embraced. What I'd look far more accurately at is segments and affinities. And what we're then interested in is like-minded behavior. So if I'm Abby for a second, Abby is very interested in women's football. My friend Tony has written a book on the Manchester United youth team. My friend David is a season ticket holder that can't get enough of transfer rumours. All these are different segments where we can understand, and the technology can simply give you that level of segmentation. So hyper-personalisation, as you described, Colin, I really don't see many businesses either able, or to Blondine's point, to value it. Now, if we start looking at sort of targeted promotions, that's just one element for customer experience. So if I get back to my Manchester United, what I'm bothered about for Abby is they understand a fan, their interests, and how best to service them. And if we're doing that, then we get the value. And remember, Manchester United actually don't monetize. They don't actually take responsibility for selling kit, but they're selling the club and the fan experience. So for them, they're more bothered to be effectively servicing Abby with women's football as her prime. And actually their competition is ESPN. Their competition is the BBC for eyeballs. And what they're actually doing for the first time as a club is putting value back to their sponsors. Sponsorship is one of the big three revenue earners, and they're giving value back to their sponsors. So rather than just a name on a shirt, they're looking at how they can encourage the broader ecosystem of the fan base be engaged and give value back to that company that gives them 200-300 million a year for the sponsorship.
I think that's a brilliant summary, and actually some lessons there for retail and for financial services, I've got to say, because actually it seems to me that this obsession with the segment of one, which is what we've heard it called as well as hyper-personal, is perhaps one of those things that at the moment is simply not attainable or useful. In actual fact, customer experience, as you said, Martin, is about almost like tribes, people like us. And suddenly, I mean, and a fan base in a football context seems to be the ultimate representation of that kind of tribal gathering of people who have the same feelings or needs, but there'll be sub-segments. And as you correctly point out with your personas that you used, I think a really brilliant example, and something I'm going to take actually from this back into banking, because I think it's a really brilliant analogy. Niall, do you have anything from PayPal's point of view in terms of, because you're at the real sharp end, you're at the pointy end of customer service. So you're the one dealing with people who absolutely expect you to consider them as a segment of one. And I just wonder how in reality, when you're dealing with complaints, because we've talked about identifying customers who we might want to acquire and retain. The biggest problem for a lot of us is dealing with the complaints, because when they come, that's the thing that makes a difference, right? So your job is controlling that tsunami. How do you do it? How does that work for you guys?
I think what we look at is we look at segmentation. So we look at, our merchants. So we have different tiers. So we've got what we call high engaged merchants and mid engaged merchants. And that's obviously based on the number of transactions and your spend. So if you're at a very top level, you get a customer success manager. And then we started creating recently business support teams for our larger merchants. And then obviously for consumers, we look at high engaged consumers. So if you're using PayPal 50 times a year, you actually get a differentiated service and quicker access to our agents than if you're if you're just an ad hoc user. And the other thing we've done is by using different channels. So, for some customers, if I only use PayPal now and again, you might actually can only actually message us. You actually can't even call us. So again, I think we've got 346 million customers. In France alone, we have over 12 million customers. And we're growing at 20% plus a year. So you can't just keep on adding 20% more headcount for your customer services. So self-service, differentiation, segmentation. I know for a lot of maybe mature companies that's standard for telecoms, lots of other industries. But when you're a fast, fintech company, you have to make these bold choices and and really focus on your big customers.
I think that's brilliant.
I think maybe the level of personalization depends also on what you have to offer. If it's a standard product that you have to offer, like maybe the level of personalization is less important. But when you're in a retail and you have like thousands and thousands of products, and then really you have like a big diversity of product, then like the hyper personalization starts to be really interesting. And we've seen huge increase in terms of revenue when we use like the typical like RFM segmentation versus like hyper personalization. So I think it also depends on your offer and what you offer.
Yeah. Just to add something about that, we have doubled the percentage of sales with promotions due to hyper personalization on promotions. This is something really important. We do not have any paper catalogs. As we said, it depends on the type of products you have to sell. And just to let you know, during the lockdown, we of course stopped every promotions, but many brands and suppliers wanted to bid on personalized promotion and digital promotions just after it was over. And because we don't have any paper catalog, it was for them a great opportunity to be present with personalized promotions. And as Blondie said, for Franprix, for instance, we have over 600 promotions per week. So imagine you are in front of a screen or have a paper with everything. It's quite important. So of course, the performance of personalized promotions is really important.
I think that's great. We've had a question come in, and by the way, to people watching this, please feel free to send us in questions as we go along. It's really helpful to us as well.
For you, the question, I think, you know, one of the things basically when we talk about customer experience, what we see from customers is that make the service as simple as possible. Like, you know, why did e-commerce, you know, come so disruptive? Because it made the buying process 3 clicks. You know, so our view is we never ever want customer to contact us. We get less than 0.5% of our customers contact us in a year. So actually take away all the pain points, make something so simple, your product so easy to use that actually they can either self-service, and only in times of actually they get stuck or there's an escalation or some level of thing where they just can't self-service. So I think, you know, for us, it is about, you know, in customer service, you never want customers contacting you. That's a starting principle. And I think, you know, that's what we are in PayPal, that you can't have 100,000 people in customer service. You have to, at every part of your business, your process or launching a new product, how simple is it? You know, is it going to end up people making it easier for people? Is there less effort for a customer? And if people have less effort and convenience, sometimes convenience beats personalization, because no one says any time. People want to do stuff straight away.
I mean, Colin said earlier, you're right at the sharp end. If PayPal's involved, it's got to be rapid. But you look at my world and customer experience, and you're after rich and engaging. And it's always that challenge for any of our clients to be rich and engaging and appropriate, but not affect speed. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but there's some stats from luxury department store about every 0.10 of a second, 0.10, what impact that had on conversion rate. And so where does PayPal play? It's rapid, it's quick. But the consideration phase, we're allowed to be a bit slower, but as soon as we get to checkout, it's got to be rapid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the point of loyalty, and I think this is connected to all of this, and this is the question that came in from Ross. He talks about the investment in corporate social responsibility, which can be a mouthful at the best of times. But the fact is that currently, not only are people looking at price or speed, which is, as you both mentioned, and about personalized products which suit their needs at the time, which Alexandre mentioned as well. It's all about, are they loyal? Because actually the social purpose that the company has, is that as important still? I mean, or is it becoming more important? Because for me, possibly sustainability, possibly these bigger topics post-COVID are now going to play really importantly for most brands. So is this a customer experience thing where you really have to prove your credentials as being socially responsible or with a purpose that people can identify with? Is that something that resonates with you guys? Because it certainly does for me. But does it?
So let me give you a Manchester United answer. As Manchester United, we don't promote corporate and social responsibility, but we've got mandated by the Premiership in England how we have to behave. So we're challenged because it's not something that will affect a fan necessarily. And we've got things like any of the pitch watering that goes on, that all comes from rainwater from the stadium. So we're not taking water to do that, but it's not shouted about, but we're demanded. We have an individual at a very senior level responsible for our corporate and social responsibility and sustainability.
What about in the grocery sector, Alexandre?
Yeah, of course, we have a social responsibility. We have walls, and we are in the city. We are in the mobility as well of the customers. So we are everywhere in their life. So we need to be on their expectations, of course. Just to let you know, for instance, how we work on supply chain and logistics. We've used the Seine River with boats to deliver 300 stores in Paris. And this has been for 10 years already. And this kind of logistics model are really important to be in the customer's expectations. Other examples still in logistics, over 60% of our e-commerce deliveries are done by bike. So the impact of e-commerce, store supplying, and also what we can do with social engagement is really important, and we mention it every time we can, of course.
On the social engagement, Alexandra, if I can just pick up, because it might be something the others have a view on. I've noticed in the last year or two, well, Capgemini work with companies like Unilever to do social listening. So we're very, very connected to the social media and the trends and supply chain that come out of that. Are you guys all over that? I mean, social media has become quite an important customer channel. I'm thinking of Niall for your customer contact centers, to try and pick up on trends a little earlier than, you know, kind of cut them off before they become a major problem. Do you all look at social media as an important channel?
Yes, of course. I would say there is no real process for that. I mean, this is a question of curiosity, of willingness, and customer listening that we all have as individuals. And of course, we do it in every service at Franprix, in strategy, in innovation, in everywhere. Everyone has access to Instagram, Facebook, and so on. So of course, we all listen what's happening there. And it doesn't mean that we have a strong policy on social networks, but of course we find inspiration and customer expectations on that, on social media.
I love the way of using it as an inspiration. That's a brilliant phrase, because often we look at it, and as you heard me say, it was almost a negative to worry about the complaints that are coming, the tweet, inevitably complaining about something. But actually, you know, that's how we can improve. Martin, you were going to say something, I think, from the fan perspective as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I almost want to ask a question. How many do you think we've got? Manchester United have got a team of just under 10, and it's used for many purposes. And it isn't there because there aren't, I mean, there's, what does social media get used for? Out with the Glazers. We don't want our owners. This player's useless. That player. So there's a whole raft of things that you need to be seeing that aren't about response. Equally, if there's a groundswell of opinion, where Abby is with Mr. Woodward, you know, he got targeted by the fans because he did that bad a job as far as a section of the fan base was concerned. So we were monitoring social to respond to it as Man United to protect Edward Woodward's house. But think about it from player perspectives. If the players aren't aware of sentiment, it can have challenges there. So without going into examples, social is essential as much as anything as a listening tool. But then equally, one of the points we've not talked a lot about is data and the quantification. So again, you know, as a club, as a global entity, virtually everything and the difference COVID's made, we make decisions based on data. And I don't know if people have heard of HIPPO, which sounds horrible, but highest paid person's opinion. And if you have HIPPO and you've got your business owners that actually don't even live in the country of the club, then that is something you can suffer from. So make everything data related, make it quantitative, and you've got answers. And it encourages a mindset of experimentation and what we as Chameleon would talk about.
Blondie, this is just your kind of subject, I think.
Yeah, yeah, because you can really use social media for like branding, for like interaction. But what we've also done is we've tested it for like in the digital catalog. You know, like more and more catalogs are like moving from paper to digital because of COVID, but also because of like environmental issues. And we've actually tested like the social media channel. And it's actually a very strong driver of sales and of like drive to store driver also.
I'm just conscious of time. We've hit the stage where we are going to open questions up from the people who are viewing this as well, and they'll come in on our chat. So please fire any questions over to us. Happy to open that up, and Elodie is going to be managing that for me. But Niall, I was just going to ask you one question before we maybe flip over to that. Have you seen it, because you're kind of uniquely positioned in PayPal, and particularly you, as I said, at the sharp end, you're combining retail, financial services, and delivering these things in real time. often to customers who need to act, as Martin said, in the moment. Do you see that? I mean, the future of where retail is, where FS is, where the experience is. I've often talked about these kind of seamless, transparent, almost invisible capabilities. They're going to have to be built under all these experiences, so there's no friction. Is this something that PayPal? I mean, I see it from one perspective, but from PayPal's perspective, do you see anything specific that's really a trend for the future in this?
Just the obvious ones, Colin. So obviously, if we look at it, it's been omni-channel. So if you look at, between credit cards, digital payment, in-store payment. So, we bought a couple of companies that have, in-store solutions. Company called Izettle in Sweden we bought. So I think if you look at it, what's the center of people? It's their mobile phone. So whether it be PayPal, Apple, a credit card, your bank account, I think that the question is, how simple is it? It can come back to convenience, because whether you're online or in the store or paying for your bus pass, it doesn't matter where you are. You only generally have one mobile phone. You want to have a trusted mobile phone with a trusted payments provider that's going to look after you for any fraud, if your phone is stolen. So I think people are very, very nervous. Like, the biggest thing we've seen in COVID is actually fraud and risk, because a lot of new users to the internet, and actually the amount of fraud. I'll give you a good example. I bought something online the other day. I got 6 emails from a bogus DHL account telling me to pay money or my package won't be released. That's so, you talk about, people's consideration set. We are now so nervous about, giving our personal information out, our credit card details out. So I think it is lots of things, new things that people have to consider now, because people are afraid or fearful of, getting ripped off or fleeced. So I think we have to really understand then, how do you offer simple solutions that are secure?
And this is the funny thing, isn't it? We get to this after we've spoken for maybe 40 minutes, and really interesting, by the way, guys. Great, interesting stuff. But we've gone from a place where we want to use data to at least personalize to the segment level, and we want to be able to offer relevancy to the customer. But then again, there's a problem about data privacy and about identity. And this all leads to a question around trust. So I'm wondering what we might well do, for those who are listening or watching, we're going to publish a quick poll that we'd love to have your response on, about who you trust. Because I don't know whether we trust more the bank, the fintech, the big tech, the retailer, or Manchester United. I mean, frankly speaking, I wonder actually if it's about like a fan base that you have as a brand now, and you really will trust them. So as an ex-Apple guy, ex-Apple employee, of course, I know a lot about trust that was built in that brand. But I wonder, we'll publish the poll and we'd love to get you engaged on it. But I wonder if any one of the panelists think about data privacy and something around the ethics of it, and how we're going to manage this in the future. Because as we've spoken about, there's a lot of data. We know a lot about our customers. How do we manage that in a regulated and non-regulated environments? Martin, have you got any thoughts, first of all, to kick us off? Because I'm seeing you poised.
I was, yeah, the caged tiger. I think the ethics question, as Chameleon, is absolutely huge. I mean, you talk to my internal teams that work on customer experience, we can manipulate from a user's behavior what and how we show things. And there are regulations inside the betting market. But for us, it's a huge issue, because if we're after loyalty and brand advocacy, that's laudable, that's okay. But if we're trying to sell things, what isn't acceptable. And there are there's a lot of detail around this that we've been involved with and our partners have published. And I think, for Abbey and Man United, they have to be seen as ethically following guidelines. And there aren't any actual published sort of metrics or things that they can talk about. But Manchester United are very bothered that they're seen to behave in a way that is ethically sound. Now, you then started talking about GDPR and information. And I think for us as Chameleon, we fundamentally don't want to hold any information. So unlike Niall in the PayPal world, we don't need to. And we'll always push whatever we do to be safe. But, there's huge amounts of money as Chameleon we spend to make sure we're GDPR compliant, we're HIPAA compliant in the States. And, you know, the fact our German business hasn't been sued yet, and we're the biggest player there, I think says it's a big focus. And, you know, we're there to help our customers ethically do the right thing and follow all the legislation.
Alexandre, how in terms of Franprix, how do you make sure that when I'm in Paris and I want to buy my specific cream and croissants, that you can then handle that as a requirement, a supply chain need, but also worry about my data and identity? How do you do that?
When you are a big banner, of course, you need to be, I mean, faithful and think about how you store data. Of course, we do not work with every person. We choose where data storage has been done, in which type of data centers, etc. So we have this kind of policies. Of course, we do not mention it everywhere to our customers because they trust us. So they believe that we should do it and it's normal as a brand. And one thing which is important with GDPR is privacy by design. So when we imagine a customer experience in digital, we of course have to think about data. We have a data protection officer in our team. So every data, every gamification process, etc., has to be passed with the scope of protection, data protection of the customer.
Blondine, do you have anything from your perspective on this?
Yeah, it's definitely a big subject. So the less we work with like personal data, the better we are, I think like GDPR really help a lot, like put some restriction and some guidelines on how to use the data. I think like overall, what's very important is that if we use the data of the client and of the person, we should like tell them, and they should have the possibility to opt out. So, but I think like having like the regulation and really help a lot the industry there.
And finally, not last but not least, of course, Niall, from PayPal, their perspective, obviously as a regulated entity, slightly different concerns, slightly different restrictions, and certainly a lot more eyes on you around the world. Where are you with this in terms of, you know, understanding your customers, knowing your customers, but also giving enough, I suppose, clear water from that knowledge to enable you to actually operate a business within the confines of an ethical consideration?
Yeah, I think our starting point is that we try to, you know, collect as little information as possible. Obviously, from a consumer point of view, you know, it's their very, very basic, you know, credit card or bank information, which obviously we hold securely, but we don't really need anything else. For merchants, it becomes more because obviously we might need VAT numbers, some company records. But I think it comes back to that trust issue, Colin, you know, that, you know, people, and whether it be a consumer or business, you know, you want to have your main suppliers, the main people you deal with, who you really trust, and know that your information will be held safely and won't be shared with people. So I think, you know, for us, the biggest thing is around security and fraud, and you know, PayPal whole reputation is built on that we've never been hacked, that we've never had any serious big fraud. So actually, I think, you know, that's our forte. So I think we've invested heavily in that. But I think again, like what's your USP, isn't it? Like everybody in this call has a different USP, and then what do you play into your strengths, and then you over invest in that. And other stuff maybe is not as, we don't, you know, our marketing is pretty basic. You know, once we get people onto the platform, we want to keep them on the platform, and that platform has to be really simple to use. So I think we all need to find out, you know, what is our core business, and not get too carried away into adjacencies, and then to really stick to that and just trust that you can just keep on building your customer base and building your profits to reinvest. So I think it comes back to that kind of commercial business model as well, isn't it? Keep on making money, even if it's, you know, if we're at scale, which is our business, then the scale allows us to, you know, to make money, to reinvest, to get bigger scale, to take on the, you know, existing, say, banks or credit cards. So that's kind of our model, is that we're scaling up.
I think that's right. I'm going to bring us to a conclusion because I think it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for those inputs. And I think, interestingly, when we come to the end of this discussion, we talk about trust. And it's interesting being online with you guys, because I have this theory, and I haven't tested this theory yet, but there's a building of digital intimacy now. And notice I use digital in this context, but we're operating differently with our customers. We're operating differently with each other. And we're building trust and intimacy in new and different ways. And this is one of the biggest post-COVID challenges. It's one of the times in our humanity where we need to trust, and we need guidance, and we need direction, and we need to trust our governments, our brands, our suppliers, that they're going to be there for us. But also we need to be able to then work with them in new ways as we go and consume in the future. So it's a really interesting balance. I'm going to wrap up because time's out, first of all, but I want to just play back. We've had some respondents to our survey, so thank you for those. No massive surprise, actually. Big tech got 0% in terms of trust. Maybe that's something to do with recent times that we've had to go through. And I won't mention any names just to preserve their modesty, but we all know who we're talking about. Bank and insurers and government were pretty much equal, 42% of the vote. So we still trust the banks, insurers, and the government, which is good in some respects and surprising in others, I'll say. And then we have the laggards are the retailers and fintechs. You guys are on 8% each, but my firm belief is that it's actually not as easy to segment like this. It's about trusting the brand, and this is why I'm glad to have you guys with me, because we will trust you guys online to speak about this. And I want to thank you for having been such eloquent and engaged participants with me. I think, thank you on behalf of everyone who's been listening, and wish you well and keep safe. Pauline, I don't know whether you have a last tiny wrap up for us, but I'm going to go on to mute and stop myself speaking and hand over to Pauline. But one last thank you from me, guys. You've been really great to speak to. Thank you very much for your help.